For thousands of years, Native American farmers fed entire nations from the same patch of ground, and the soil only got richer every single season. Think about that for a second. Right now, modern American agriculture loses more than $500 million every single year just trying to replace soil fertility that's already been destroyed. Scientists have confirmed that 1/3 of every pound of fertilizer dumped on U.S. corn farms isn't even growing food. It's just patching holes that industrial farming ripped open in the first place. The Midwest alone has hemorrhaged 57.6 billion metric tons of topsoil since settlers started plowing 160 years ago. Some experts are now saying we could run out of usable topsoil altogether within the next 60 years. And yet, long before any of that was happening, indigenous peoples across North America had already solved this problem. They called their solution the Three Sisters: corn, beans, and squash. 3 plants, 1 mound of soil. A farming system so brilliantly engineered that it didn't just survive for centuries, it thrived. It fed families, sustained whole civilizations, and left the earth better than it found it, season after season. So what exactly did they figure out that we seem to have completely forgotten? The story behind the seeds. The Three Sisters weren't discovered overnight. This is a farming system that evolved over thousands of years, stretching back to ancient Mesoamerica. Squash was the first of the 3 to be domesticated, followed by maize and then beans, a process that unfolded over roughly 5,000 to 6,500 years. By the time European colonizers arrived on the eastern shores of what would become the United States, the Three Sisters had already been feeding people for millennia. Archaeological evidence places the Three Sisters complex firmly in North America by around 1070 AD, but the practice had already been spreading, adapting, and perfecting itself for centuries before that. The Maya were growing a version of it called milpa in Central America as far back as 3,500 years ago, with evidence suggesting the practice in Mexico may reach as far back as 7,000 years. From Mexico to Montana, women, who were primarily the farmers in these cultures, had been mounding up earth and pressing these 3 seeds into the same square foot of soil for longer than the Roman Empire existed. By the time European settlers arrived, at least 15 different indigenous nations in the northeastern United States and southeastern Canada had built their food systems around this trio. To the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy, corn, beans, and squash were known as Dioheko, which roughly translates to those who support us. They weren't just crops. They were considered sacred gifts, spiritual beings, the physical and spiritual sustainers of life. Iroquois tradition tells that they sprouted from the body of Sky Woman's daughter, a gift of agriculture given directly to the people. Why 3 plants together is genius. What makes the Three Sisters so remarkable isn't just that it works. It's why it works. And the answer is a masterclass in ecological teamwork. Each plant plays a specific, irreplaceable role. And when you put them together, something extraordinary happens. Let's start with the corn. The tall, strong stalks, sometimes reaching 8 feet or higher, act as a natural trellis. That's the first gift corn gives to the system. Now enter the beans. Beans are climbers. They need support, and the corn provides exactly that. But beans don't just take from the arrangement. They give something back that no other plant in the trio can. They fix nitrogen. Deep in the roots of every bean plant live colonies of bacteria called rhizobia. These tiny organisms have a superpower. They pull nitrogen gas directly out of the atmosphere and convert it into nitrates, the form that plants can actually use as fertilizer. Every bean vine climbing that corn stalk is quietly pumping nitrogen back into the soil. No synthetic fertilizer required. No extra cost. Just biology doing what biology has always done. And that's still not the whole picture. Spread out at ground level, the squash does something that every experienced gardener will immediately appreciate. It takes over. The broad, paddle-shaped leaves of squash plants spread across the soil like a living blanket, blocking sunlight from reaching the ground. That means weeds can't grow. The shade also keeps the soil cool and dramatically reduces evaporation, locking moisture in place during the dry heat of a summer afternoon. The squash vines even produce a slight chemical signal that repels certain insects, a natural pest deterrent built right into the garden. Meanwhile, the whole structure works in 3 dimensions. The corn catches sunlight up top, the bean leaves fill in the middle layer, and the squash captures every last beam of light that makes it all the way down to the ground. No waste, no competition, just 3 plants dividing the available resources perfectly between themselves. Cornell University agronomist Jane Mount Pleasant described this system as one that enhances the soil physical and biochemical environment, minimizes soil erosion, improves soil tilth, manages plant population and spacing, provides for plant nutrients in appropriate quantities and at the time needed, and controls weeds. And she said all of that not about some cutting-edge laboratory technique. She said it about a farming practice developed by indigenous women thousands of years ago. The soil secret nobody told you. Here's where the 3 sisters story goes from impressive to genuinely stunning. In the Haudenosaunee tradition, fields planted with the 3 sisters were never tilled. The soil was never turned over, never broken up, never exposed. And that turns out to be critically important, because tillage is one of the primary ways that modern agriculture destroys the living ecosystem inside soil. When you plow, you break up the fungal networks, kill the microorganism communities, and expose carbon-rich organic matter to the air, where it rapidly oxidizes and disappears. Every time a modern industrial farmer runs a tractor through a field, they're destroying the very thing that makes soil productive. The 3 sisters avoided all of that. Instead, at the end of every harvest season, the stalks and leaves and vines, all the crop residue, were incorporated back into the mounds. That organic matter fed the microorganisms, which fed the soil, which fed next year's crops. Research on 15th and 16th century Iroquoian agricultural sites in New York confirmed something remarkable. The nitrogen levels in those ancient corn kernels showed that Iroquoian farmers successfully maintained soil fertility across centuries of continuous cropping. Centuries. Not just a few good years. Centuries. Compare that to what we're doing today. In 160 years of conventional American farming, the Midwest has lost topsoil at nearly double the rate the USDA even considers sustainable. Roughly 35% of the entire Corn Belt has lost its topsoil completely. A farmer in southern Iowa once put it plainly. In 150 years, his region lost over half of its rich topsoil, if not all of it in some places. The fields are literally lower than the untouched prairie next to them. A complete diet from 3 crops. The genius of the 3 sisters doesn't stop at the soil. It extends all the way to your plate. Corn provides carbohydrates, calorie-dense energy to fuel a day's work. Beans bring protein and essential amino acids. And together, corn and beans do something neither can do alone. When eaten in combination, they form a complete protein, providing all the essential amino acids the human body needs. Squash rounds out the diet with vitamins A and C, minerals, and healthy fats, nutrients that corn and beans don't supply in abundance. What that means is that a family or community growing the 3 sisters wasn't just keeping the soil alive. They were keeping themselves alive with a nutritionally balanced diet from 3 crops growing in the same space. Research by Dr. Jane Mount Pleasant at Cornell found that the 3 sisters system yields more energy, roughly 12.25 million kilocalories per hectare, and more protein, approximately 349 pounds per hectare, than any single crop monoculture or combination of monocultures planted to the same area. You get more food, more nutrition, and better soil, all from the same plot of land. Geographer Carl O. Sauer once called the 3 sisters a symbiotic plant complex of North and Central America without an equal elsewhere. That's not romanticization. That's a scientific assessment. What we threw away, and why it matters now. When colonization disrupted indigenous farming traditions across North America, something irreplaceable was lost. The land didn't know that, of course. It just started responding to the new practices, the plowing, the monocultures, the synthetic chemicals. And it responded the way neglected land always does. It slowly gave out. Today, industrial monoculture farming repeats the same crop on the same land year after year, systematically depleting the same nutrients, destroying the same soil structure, killing the same microbial communities. Glyphosate-based herbicides like Roundup can persist in soil for over a decade, disrupting the very microbial ecosystems that give soil its life. A recent dust storm in Chicago echoed those same conditions, similar in scale to storms last seen during the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Farmers are now spending billions of dollars each year on synthetic fertilizers largely derived from fossil fuels, just to maintain yields on land that should be naturally fertile. Roughly 1/3 of every bag of fertilizer applied to U.S. corn isn't boosting production. It's just holding the line against an ongoing collapse in soil fertility. That's more than $500 million in extra annual costs to American corn farmers alone. And that's not counting the environmental damage from fertilizer runoff that creates massive dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico every single year. Meanwhile, researchers at institutions like Cornell University, the University of Wisconsin, and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada are now actively studying the three-sister system in states like Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota. What they're finding is exactly what indigenous farmers knew all along. When you work with nature instead of against it, the land doesn't wear out. It rebuilds. No-till farming, a practice that echoes the Haudenosaunee approach, is currently being adopted on about 40% of cropland acres in the Midwest. Scientists from the University of Massachusetts Amherst published research showing that no-till farming could extend the Midwest's current soil fertility for several more centuries, just by not destroying what's already there. The three sisters didn't need a land-grant university to validate them. They didn't need a government subsidy program or a $50,000 piece of machinery. They needed 3 seeds, a mound of earth, and the understanding that in nature, everything works best when it works together. There's a lesson in those 3 seeds that goes way beyond farming. The corn doesn't crowd out the beans. The squash doesn't hoard the water. Each plant does what it does best, and in doing so, lifts the others up. The whole system only works because every part of it gives something. And the result is a garden that doesn't just survive. It thrives, season after season, century after century, without ever exhausting the ground beneath it. Which makes you wonder, if 3 plants figured this out thousands of years ago, what's our excuse? If this story made you think differently about how we feed ourselves, drop a comment below. I want to know what surprised you most. And if you know someone who's into sustainable farming, regenerative agriculture, or just loves a good, "the ancients had it right all along" story, share this video with them. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because we dig into stories just like this one every single week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next.